Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the R&D Podcast. I am your host, Rachel.
And I'm Delia.
And in this episode, we're going to be talking about, are you a cheerleader or
a nag?
A nag.
Ooh.
Let's get into it.
Yes. So this particular subject was brought to my attention by someone that basically was respectfully in a very kindly way saying that, their wife was a little bit not so cheery. And, it's so funny because then I went and did a little bit of research and I noticed that, with Henry Ford and his wife at the time, she was his biggest cheerleader. And I have to say that there was fail after failed attempt to actually launch the Ford company, but she believed in him so much so that she said, no matter what you're doing, I'm going to be by your side. So I definitely think that these are historical moments that you think, if it wasn't for that woman cheering her husband on, we wouldn't have the Ford company.
Yes.
And so oftentimes I think that women could be, the inspiration behind a man or the dream killer behind a man.
Yes.
And so I think that it's a fine line between being a nag and or a cheerleader when it comes to business or even in the home, really. So I think it's like, what are you being? Are you cheering your husband on to say, you know what, you're great? Or are you nagging him like, oh, not that again? Are you going to try to start another business? You've had 3 failed businesses. But I think it's important that when we are with someone, in my opinion, you have to be like Henry Ford's wife, where she empowers and says, you know what, no matter what, I'm going to cheer you on.
I agree with that. And I think that you, as a woman, or as women, I should say,
Right.
we also get a little insecure.
Right.
And we spoke in a previous episode about how a lot of times that happens when a woman is trying to start, her business or pursue her dreams, and
so true.
all of a sudden her partner is like getting intimidated by her feathers, right? That she's going to fly away, grow wings and fly away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as women, we have to be mindful
That's
of the fact of how we're being triggered or impacted, or how we're reacting really to him having these dreams, because
right.
Some of these guys that run the world today
Mm-hmm.
looked literally crazy to their peers and their family members, and clearly to maybe even their partners in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
And having a woman by your side is what that saying is, behind every great man or brilliant man is a wonderful, powerful woman. So I think gut checking what do I feel about this, and then asking yourself, if you're reacting negatively, like, oh, that again, oh, another idea, oh, like you're just going to spend more money on that, like, oh, so like what, you're struggling again this month?
I
all
know.
of that, or you know what, you're not going to spend time with me and the kids, that's what you're going to do after work, is work on your little project. Those types of things are dream killer situations, and you have to ask yourself, what are you afraid of?
What are you afraid of? Yeah, and I think with what you're saying, though, Rachel, I think with, I've always heard behind a great man, there's a great woman. But there are men, though, respectfully also, that will not give you your flowers, as they say, and they're going to say, well, it's because of me, or it's because of my efforts. And I think that when you take into consideration, or when you think about a partnership, it's not just you or it's just me. Sometimes I think with partnerships, even with, us doing this podcast, sometimes what I've noticed is that someone has to pick up the slack. Sometimes you're doing more than, I'm doing, or vice versa. And that's the way relationships are the same way. Sometimes someone's picking up the slack a little bit more. And I think that understanding that there's going to be a partnership and not acting like you're the one that did it all. It's like, because I think that it's important that you understand that you guys are coming together as a partnership. And I do think that, a lot of the time it's also going back to what you were saying. It's not to nag on the person to say like, now you're going to do this next business and now you're not going to be with us. And now, it's all about me. And I do believe that there's a fine line between having a balance of, making sure that you are, excelling in business, but that you're not taking the moment or the time to spend time with your family. Because at the end of the day, if you're chasing a bag and you know that life is really short, I mean, what's the purpose if you've let all this time go by? Because, I think that oftentimes, even on the podcast, I always say there's a lot of things that you can buy in this lifetime, but the one thing that you could never, ever, ever purchase is a time, or lost time, at that. So I think it's important that you kind of have a time management or a balance, and you as a woman understand that if you want to have him excel or have your family excel, that you need to cheer him on. Because I think that we as women have the ability to either uplift or kill the morale.
Yeah.
And so I always say whoever you choose as a partner can either make or break you. And even in business, by the way, it doesn't necessarily have to be in relationships, marriage, or anything like that. Even in business, you have to watch who you're going into business with.
Yes.
And is this person going to, like you say, carry the other side of the basket, because that's always your analogy. It's like, partnerships are that way, business-ships are that way.
Yes.
And I think it's like understanding that both people are contributing into something,
Yeah. I right now when you were saying about the me, and I thought, you know what? I think that the love language is French, because you say we, right?
We, right.
And if you can
So
take
true,
it
yes.
from, me to we, and understanding that you're going to benefit from whatever success he has. Just
Right.
like the saying says, happy wife, happy life. Men have figured out if she is happy, we're all.
Well, I've heard this one that says happy house, happy spouse. So that's
true.
That's not to the wife. That's not to the.
That's the we part.
That's not to the husband. Happy house, happy spouse. And I think if we can bring the neutrality, like to make it neutral, I don't know that I was going to say it correctly, but if we could be neutral about it and not be like happy wife, happy life, because then what is that doing to the man?
That's true.
That's just like, he's like,
oh, just shut her up. Here, just give her cookies.
Or, basically it's like he's being a slave to her. And I think that there has to be a fine balance of, it's not just about me. It's like what you said. It's about the French language. It's about we. So I got to make you happy. You have to make me happy, however that is.
Whatever that looks like. And I feel like if you look around at, for instance, Jeff Bezos, he had McKinsey at first.
Right.
And when you really look at that, when she married him, he was a successful guy in business. I don't know if he was a hedge fund manager. I forget what he was.
Right.
But he was, in his own right, semi-successful.
Right.
And then he just has this idea, right? Like,
Right.
oh, I'm going to sell books on the internet.
Right.
And it's like, what the heck is the internet? And why would people go there to buy books when they can go to a library or Barnes & Noble or whatever it might be? And then but she didn't probably do that. She just was like, all right, well, what does this look like? And he's like, well, we got to get rid of our apartment. We got to do, hunker down.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, let's go to my parents. And
they lived in the basement.
Out of the basement of her parents' house.
Yeah.
And you can sit there and go, yeah, Rachel, but now he essentially left her and traded up, or however you want to look at that.
Happens.
And that does happen, but you can't go through life fearful of the unknowns.
And and to add to the story that you're speaking in regards to, with the Jeff Bezos and McKinsey, I did read a little bit on that one particular story. She basically, when he was getting investors to come on, he was basically telling them, look, you're going to invest this much money. You're probably not going to see a return for 20 years.
Yeah.
So if you really think about, that whole scenario, I'm sure he's telling the same thing to his wife. Look, this is a, conglomerate. This is going to be like this most
Empire
amazing thing.
stuff.
It's going to be like, life-changing. I can't imagine that he imagined that it was going to be like this, the way it's like shutting down stores and doing all the things. But the fact that he sold her on the idea, because that's basically what he did. He sold her on the idea that, you have to just be patient with me. It's going to take about 20 years. And that's basically, if you go back in time from the moment that he started Amazon until the moment that he took off, it literally was about 20 years. So I don't know if he manifested the 20 years or what have you, but the point of the matter is that she took that ride with him. And
it sounds like he really included her in that journey. Like, it sounds like he went long and he said, babe, we French,
right.
we are going to go long.
Yes.
Like, if you're in it, let's go. Like, we're going to go all the way. One of the things that I loved is even in their breakup and all of that, with the shares, he did not argue. He's like, these are your shares, take half of whatever it was. And it was so many shares, and people were arguing like, oh, she didn't do the work. Why? Like, the public jumped in and was like, oh, he's an idiot. Like, why would he do that? This and this and that. And what I would, and obviously he didn't care. He did it. And also what she did in return was say, she recognizes if she sells off or mismanages those shares, it takes down the whole company. So she made him the executor of those shares. In other words, she trusts that he's going to do the right thing. And then obviously she gets dividends and she makes her money and stuff like that.
I mean, at the end of the day, respectfully, I'm just saying, I mean, it's all relative, right? You spend as much money as you make, but when you're making that much money, I'm not really sure that you can really spend that much money. And I believe that from what I heard or what I read, she donated maybe half of the money. So she donated most of it. So,
But, you might be listening to this and saying, okay, ladies, but
like, how does it align with me?
I don't lay with I don't have a future Bezos. You might not see the vision that he sees for himself. You might look at him and go, what? This guy is socially awkward, doesn't go to the gym, doesn't even, you know what I mean? Like, you might just see a literal toad.
Yeah.
And yet he has this prince mentality, and he's sitting there going, but I am not going to be a toad. I'm a prince in training, or whatever he sees for himself. And I can see, ladies, that it could be difficult and challenging, but I urge you to just say, what would you want him to do for you?
Right.
And then operate in that way, because you never know. You are not making sacrifices for each other. I want to kind of really set this up, because in what I do in my day job, let's just say, right, for CEO, we're learning to break up with words like hustle and sacrifice, because so many people are like, oh my God, I sacrificed 3 years.
Yeah.
And like
it's a time in already, you know, so they
make it like a lost sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
Like a struggle. Instead of saying investment, I invested 3 years in this dream that I had. You know what I mean? We've invested 3 years in this, let's just say, podcast, right? We didn't sacrifice. Like, we're investing. Right now that you guys are listening to this, we're filming it when the whole world is on pause. We are hitting record. And we are saying, hey, we're not going, oh my God, what a sacrifice. We could be in Kabul right now. We're saying we're making an investment to get ahead of the curve while it's quiet.
Right.
So I think that you need to look at your spouse in the same way.
I agree.
This is a person that you are investing in, and obviously he's investing in you in one way, shape, or another.
Right.
And if he has a wild dream, but you're like, he's a toad that just has all these dreams, let him have his illusions, and just go, all right, like, you need to buy more
this or that,
whatever.
But I do think that they, you know, there is something that is said, and basically what is said is that most of the time women are a little bit, because we are more emotional, men just they think business, and so we're a little bit more emotional. So sometimes I think that women can buy a bad partnership. And so if you're coming from that place, it's like really understanding what it is, instead of, nagging, saying, I think he's going to screw you over. It's just like, look, my vibe is, I don't really trust the guy for XYZ reason, or I don't really trust this business dealing because of whatever reason. But if you're constantly knocking your person down, and you're not letting them grow, that's going to be, he's basically trying to maybe uplift your family, or look for other ways to make sure that you guys grow as a unity. And, I'm going to share a really quick story about Michelle Obama and Barack Obama.
Oh, yes.
So there's a story of, they were looking for a place to eat, and it was this random state in some random city, and they happened to sit down and they realized that at the restaurant owner happened to be Michelle Obama's. I'm probably destroying the whole story.
He requested to meet Michelle Obama in the back.
Or something kitchen, like that, but where they sat at a restaurant, and that restaurant happened to be a man that she used to date.
Yes.
And so, as they're being very friendly about all the things, then later Barack said, or within the table, was in front of the table.
When she came out.
He said something like, "Could you imagine you would have been a restaurant owner?" And then she replied back, "No, imagine he probably would have been the president." So in other words, she realizes that she would have been that person in anyone's life.
Yes.
So I think more than being a nag, it's like kind of taking that whole storyline that I just messed up and saying, how do I, know that no matter who I'm with, they're going to be at their maximum potential, rather than me knocking them down.
We always talk about, Delia and I, we have this in common, and that's that we like to leave people places, and things better than how we found them. And I think if you could take that approach in your life, especially in your relationships, friendships, marriages, and whatever situation that you're in, and to just go, you know what, don't look at this like, oh, I'm going to invest all this knowledge, or cheering him on, or doing whatever, and then he's just going to, make
go with the
$10
secretary
million
and then take off with the secretary.
Leave me for a white girl, like Kanye says, and do all that. Don't focus on the loss.
Mm-hmm.
Don't focus on all the things that can go wrong. Imagine all the things that can go right. And I sit there and I talk about this a lot, like when people say, oh my God, but what if I fail? But what if and I go, well, what if you win?
Yeah.
When I make that statement to people, they just stop. And I had to do that for my own life. Delia and I know, we talk about this. It's I could have sat there and said, okay, well, I'm a woman over 40. I'm plus size. I've been through so much. I'm heartbroken. Whatever the things are, the narratives are, I'm too old. Whatever it is, I'm going to fail because of it. But what if... But just by saying to myself, but what if I actually win?
Yeah.
And then doing that with your husband and go, but what if he wins? And what if we win? And granted, if you cross that bridge and the bridge isn't pretty, and there's some other girl named Judy on the other, Susie Lou, right?
Susie Lou,
23-year-old Susie Lou. It is what it is. And
but I think no greater loss is the loss of you never taking the chance.
Yes.
That's the biggest loss, in my opinion,
Yes.
right? Because I feel like to be a dreamer, there's nothing wrong with that. And I always do say this, I say it to anyone that will hear me. I do believe that our thoughts and our words are magic. So if you believe that you're going to fail, then you're going to fail.
Yeah.
If you believe that there is a possibility that there is no way you're going to lose, then you're not going to lose. And at the end of the day, if you don't take the opportunity, how will you know?
What's the rock I always had on my desk in our office? Whether you believe, if you believe that you
can
or you can't, you're right.
You're right.
Yes.
And so, in other words, I think it's really important that, you take all things into consideration. If you think that it's going to be a detrimental loss and you see that it could be a bit shaky, that he's going to invest, I don't know, all your life savings into something, you got to gauge that a little bit and not be like, well, am I being a cheerleader or a nag? But I think it's so important for you to just vibe that, check it out, feel it out, and then say, you know what, I'm all in with this dude, or this deal, or this partnership, or whatever it is that you're doing.
I would watch the movie Walk the Line and ask yourself, are you the wife that's at home that doesn't even want him to talk about his music, doesn't even want him to rehearse, thinks it's silly, talks bad about him to her girlfriends about this silly thing, and he wears black all the time, and he can't even sing, he can't hold a tune. And then there's like June Carter, and she just thinks he's like the most amazing thing since sliced bread. And I get it. Like, we can't always be like that because we know them already so well.
Yeah.
And it's like a stinky old shoe. But at the end of the day, if you polish it up and you really look at it and go, you know what, it could probably go the mile. Like, you never know. And so to me, I think I'm more of a, it's worth the investment. And off camera, we were saying, we even struggle with like maybe giving too much advice or like being too excited for people that are in our lives and be like, oh, they say
one
thing.
It's none of your business. Yeah. Stay out of it. It's none of your business. And it's like, oh, no, but if you
like we want to like.
It's like, it's none of your business. Stay in your lane. And it's like, just keep it to yourself, But I think definitely people, when you bounce ideas off of people, it's always good because you build that momentum. And if you could do that pillow talk with your significant other where you're building momentum and, you understand that both of you are going to be in this together, whether that's you going into business with him or you're holding the household down, however that is, I think it's important. And, I think for even not just in business, by the way, I think even in health, to be someone's cheerleader, meaning like you see your husband's falling off track. Maybe shifting if you're the one cooking, or maybe he's cooking, because sometimes I see that a lot where women don't cook much, men are the ones in the kitchen, but you guys are making better decisions. I think it's important that you're moving in the right direction where you're cheerleading, you're that cheerleader where you're saying, hey honey, don't you think we should go on a walk, or don't you think we should go to the gym, at least where you guys can have that in common, because I think that sometimes people can get jealous if you're not aligning in that regard with your significant other, where you're like, please don't tell me you're going to the gym again. And it's this whole thing where it's like, it just is repulsive. And you have to remember, okay, so how do we do this together? I cheer him on softly, subtly, whatever it is. And you guys, excel in that regard. Yeah. So anyway, that's all we got for today, right? Or do you have anything else to say?
Be a cheerleader, not a nag.
So that's all we got. So
all right,
cheers.
See you next time.
Bye.